Hello and welcome to the Crystal Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had a great conversation with Dr. Kurt Steele. He has a long history in the profession. He's been around for about 27 years. He's a vision source administrator. He owns a multiple site practice. And then he's also consulting with practices. Specifically, he feels like he works really well with rural practitioners and providers to kind of help them through the processes that he had to struggle with for through his career, really, so that they don't have to make the same mistakes. So Kurt's really worth your time. Please enjoy our conversation. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. Getting young presbyopes into progressive lenses can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Verilux Liberty 3.0 lenses are an introductory solution for new and young presbyopes, and they are available in select ad powers. This lens provides all-in-one balanced vision for an accessible and great first-time progressive lens wearing experience. Learn more about Verilux Liberty 3.0 lenses and get free resources to help start the progressive lens conversation with young presbyopes at eslorepro.com/Verilux. You know, I get questions all the time about how do we use 9.2 codes and 9.9 codes and which ICD codes go with different CPT codes and what can be billed together and what can't. And this confusion, this uncertainty really holds us back oftentimes to be able to do what we want to do, which is help our patients see clearly and provide their best opportunity for a lifelong vision. And so we built iCode Education for that specific purpose. We have lots of resources that are based in helping you understand disease states, helping you understand revenue cycles and billing and coding practices. So check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. And we have a specific bundle there for you if you'd like to take advantage of it. It's the Premier Billing and Coding Bundle. We've got a 10% discount code just for listeners of this show. You can just, in the coupon code at checkout, you can enter in iCode Media 22. That's EYECODE MEDIA 22 at checkout. We'd love to have you. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. You know, one of the things, Kurt, that kind of your claim to fame is you sort of tell the story of coming into a smaller practice and kind of purchasing and then growing that practice. I think it's a good story, and it's one that people ought to hear.
Okay, it's man, that could be a whole podcast in of itself. But you know, it's amazing how I guess God works in mysterious ways. Probably one of the best things that ever happened to me was I was in a car wreck. And here's why I say that. So I came out of optometry school and thought, well, you know, I want to practice in a large metropolitan whatever area. And I took a job in Knoxville, Tennessee, at a ophthalmology clinic. It was a great job, but they had an office manager who just had a terrible view of optometry. As a matter of fact, she even thought, you know, like I shouldn't be called doctor, and I didn't know any better at the time because I was the optometrist and they were the ophthalmologist, and there had to be a distinction. But it paid well and it was a good job. So anyway, on the way to boards in Memphis, on the very last clinical Part 3 boards, I was in a car wreck, and I was even 5 minutes late for the first station. But I thought, well, even though I'm a little late, I'll miss a few here, but I'll ace everything else and be fine. So anyway, the ophthalmologist office manager, I'd been there about 4 months. I requested a vacation and she turned it down. And I was pretty mad about that. And I thought, well, you know, I didn't go to school all this time for that. And a guy named Jeff Foster, who if there was a Mount Rushmore of Tennessee optometry, nobody in Tennessee would disagree with this statement. He would be on it. He happened to call me that day and he said, hey, I know you got this great job at St. Mary's Center for Sight in Knoxville, but we're guys retiring up here, and would you be interested in giving us a try? And I said, well, I want to go to the beach in 6 weeks. Can I go? And he said, sure. And I said, well, then I'm interested. And literally just almost kind of because I was mad about going to the beach, I go to this little small town practice in Newport, Tennessee. Never even heard of Newport. Well, anyway, it turned out I did not pass those boards, and if I'd have still been in Knoxville, they'd have probably just kicked me out the door. But Jeff Foster stuck by me and let me just work with him until I got all that straightened out. So when the time came at the end of 1996, I got offered to go back to the University of Tennessee as an optometrist, which at the time looked like a much better position. And luckily, my wife was of the same. Then my fiance was of the same mindset that I was. And I just remember telling her, I says, Jeff stuck by me in a few months where a lot of people would not have stuck by me. And I can't do it to him. I've grown very fond of him, and like I said, he's a champion of Tennessee optometry. Matter of fact, probably the smartest thing I've done in my entire career is just ride his footsteps. So, ride his coattails. We stayed. Despite I could have made double the income initially going back working with ophthalmologists, and it turned out to be the best financial decision I've ever made because,
you'd still be stuck. You'd still be stuck doing what you're doing or what you would have been doing. There's a couple things that kind of strike me about this story. The first one is you were looking in 1996. You were looking for the ability to say, "Look, I want time off. I want flexibility in my schedule." I didn't go to school for 8 years and incur student loans and headaches and hassles to basically be dictated to by somebody else.
That is very correct.
That translates into what I think a lot of people are dealing with right now today in their practices and trying to hire new doctors. Is that there's this thought that new doctors just, are kind of flighty. I mean, maybe it's not a thought, but there's sort of this rumor or even this conception, whether it's accurate or inaccurate. But I'll tell you that like your story kind of resonates to me as well. Like I got into this because I want to take care of people. I want to provide for my family, and I want to have good flexibility in my day-to-day life. And optometry provides that. Certainly doesn't, I didn't have a lot of flexibility, and I hustled a ton when I was first out of school. But I guess my point is that a lot of times I have people tell me that wanting to be able to have, you're planning for a vacation, but you just got a job. That's not right. There's this sort of this stigma against that when you think about generationally from kind of the people that are your generation, my generation. We're about 12 years apart. And then even like my dad's generation, right before, because you're kind of right between my dad and I. And but my dad's generation for sure, they're kind of exiting, and then there's sort of this resentment of young doctors who want to have a lot of flexibility. But what you're saying is that desire existed in you in the 90s. It existed in me in 2008, and so we shouldn't be surprised that it exists in young practitioners right now. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, and because I always like to give a shout out because he passed away from COVID 2 years ago. So, a big thing for me is, and actually today is the 2-year anniversary of my dad's passing. Someone mentioned two people that were huge for me was Jeff Foster, who I stood by him when maybe it looked better to not, and I really think God rewarded me for that. Like, I was at the practice when I came here was about a $380,000 practice, and we literally going to eclipse $3 million between now and the end of this year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And one of the reasons I think, and my dad, and like it's kind of funny because and part of my attracting doctors to a poor rural area, one of the biggest lessons I learned from my dad, and my dad was very good at business, was if one side loses, both sides lose. So whenever I don't really negotiate. When I come into a deal, I try to figure out a way, like, here's how I'm going to win, and here's how you're going to win. I don't come at it from an initial approach of just, this is how I'm going to win. And then you got to figure out how you're going to win, and we'll try to meet in the middle. I really try very hard when I come at somebody with a solution, like, here's how we're both going to win, and then that way we don't have to really spend a lot of time talking about it.
Why do you think that, what experiences have occurred in your past to make you think like that initially?
Oh, God, you know what? I just learned it from my dad. I can't think of one particular thing. I just remember hearing always, my dad was very good at striking deals and negotiating deals. He was literally sent to just do that sometimes, and he always tried to figure out a way both sides win. And there, if you think about it, that's true. So, if you bring in an associate and it doesn't work out for one of you, it's not going to work out for either of you. If one side loses, really, both sides lose. So, and kind of I want to go back to your question. It's kind of funny. You talked about, I think there's probably the same percentage of doctors that get it and don't. So I've got a system in place where a doctor, we don't even really have associates. We have potential partners. And I've got one doctor that just absolutely, he makes more than me, and he's only been here 2 years, but he works 10 days more a quarter than I do. Yeah, I mean, he'll actually feel bad about it, and he just works hard. And I mean, he takes his vacations, but when he's here, he does not miss. He doesn't miss like half a day to get his, hair done or take his dog somewhere. I mean, he really puts his nose. And then honestly, I got a notice today from another associate who is going elsewhere, actually, and even kind of breaking the covenant to compete, but those things are kind of worthless anyway. She wanted more money.
Are they worthless in Tennessee? They're pretty much worthless in Nebraska,
yeah, they're
too.
worthless in Tennessee. So, but she wanted a lot more money to do a lot less. And so
is she getting that?
No. I guess that's why we're parting ways.
With you, she wanted that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, like I would say, we need to go visit another, like one of the things I love to do is when we get a new doctor is we go visit other medical facilities and say, this is our new doctor. And I told her in like one of our things, like you need to plan these. And she said, actually, that's something the office manager should do. I shouldn't have to do that. I thought, no, actually you should. They need to hear from you, not our office manager. So, so I've seen both sides. I've got 2 doctors here and one that, and she was wondering why he made a lot more than she did. And I was like, well, he worked like 30 days more than you did this past year. What do you expect? It's not rocket science. If you work more, you make more. So,
what was the response to that?
Silence. That kind of stopped the conversation. It's not hard. You made actually as much a day per day as he did. He worked a lot more days. So, yes, if you're new, you do need to. You can still take a week or 2 off, but when you're here, you just got to concentrate on being. Now, to take up for that young associate, she got married. She had a lot of things there was a lot of reasons that she worked a lot less days than the other guy.
Sure.
That were very legitimate, but still, yeah, you're going to make less money. I can't just magically come up with this income that we're supposed to pay you. It's got to be collected. It's got to be brought in. It's got to be earned. So,
when you
we parted ways with hers, but the other guy that worked, like he's, and there's kind of an equity part to it and everything. He's getting a great deal, like a really great deal. Like he's probably going to have about $200,000 of equity January 1st when he's the first day he's a partner because of the system we have in place, and he's done very well with it. And it's because I'd say he averages working. There's, if you do a 5-day week, 13 weeks, there's up to 65 days a quarter. You can work, and he's always in the upper 50s. And whereas the rest of us are around 48, 49, and then our young associate, there was one quarter she was like 38, 39. So I'm kind of like, you made less money, you work less. So
yeah,
I don't know if that answered. I've seen both sides. I've seen what you're talking about with one, but then the other, he's of that generation. He's in his late 20s, early 30s, and he's absolutely killing it. And he's killing it because he's busting his butt.
I think the real crux of my question was that often it gets assigned as being a bad thing, but if that's something that you're looking for, right? Because you were looking for it, I think in a lot of ways I didn't know, but I was looking for it as well. At the time I didn't know, but there's compromises that come with it, and those compromises initially can be financial, but over time, if you grow a practice and you grow a patient base, it's as long as you're accepting of those financial consequences of that flexibility, and to your point, as long as you have tried to work to find common ground and beneficial relationships on both sides when you're coming to an agreement, then that should work out, where both parties kind of walk away and say, look, I didn't make as much as I otherwise would have, but I got the trip to the beach.
Right. So like the young associate I was telling him, and that really kind of I mean, I think it still soured her a little anyway, but I mean, what ended, there was a big email string back and forth about how fair or unfair the pay was, and I said, I don't know if you realize this. I can't remember the exact number, but it was upper 30, so let's say 38. You missed 38 days this year, in addition to the 10 days we take off just naturally in the practice because of Christmas, Thanksgiving, Good Friday, Independence Day, and so total of 48 days that you could have worked that was missed. So yeah, I mean,
it's significant.
Your income is going to suffer. I don't know how else to put it. She actually made $490 a day as an associate, but she only worked so many days, and $490 a day is not bad.
No, it's not bad. I mean,
and that's what she ended up making with our formula, and I pointed that out. To be exact, I think it was $486. You made $486 a day. I happen to know that locally, even commercial pays like $450. I mean, your per day rate, you actually did real well. You just didn't work enough days, and it just never seemed to completely register. And I'm sure there's another side to that story. There always is, but that's the way I look at it. And then you got this other guy who's doing incredibly well on our system because he worked 220 days a year, versus everybody else around 180. He just earned it.
Well, but to your point, I mean, it sounds to me like the doctor who's leaving you, she was able to take basically 48 days off in the year. So she worked.
And we didn't say anything.
She got paid. She got paid like she had a kind of continual income throughout the practice, but she just probably didn't hit her metrics and cover her costs otherwise that she would have made even more than that. Because let's say she had worked another 20 days, that would have offset her costs even more. So it's not like she just made a finite amount of $490 a day. Basically, that was extrapolated out, including the days that she would have had off. Is that correct?
Right. That is correct.
Yeah.
We don't pay her per day. We have a formula, and basically we treat new doctors even like their partners. Like they're a potential partner, not an associate. And there's a formula that's based partly on your ownership and partly on your production. And so when it was all said and done, she made $490 a day, but we didn't pay her like you're going to make this much a day. We just paid her based on that formula.
Right.
What I pointed out to her you made a lot less than Graham, but you worked a lot less. If you look at the per day, it was pretty close. So
then, Kurt, how do you translate your experience in to your words, rural, poor, small town Tennessee, into other practices across the country that may or may not match your demographic, your patient demographic? Oh, Kurt, I'm in the middle of Chicago. My practice can't be like yours. Or I'm what are your thoughts about that? Or I'm in California. Nothing like, Kurt, you have access to all the medical plans and you can do all the high-end valued stuff. But in California, I can't get on any of these HMO plans, so all I have is managed vision care or cash pay or these really small plans. Everybody is owned by Kaiser. So, how do you respond to
that? You're right. So I've opened up this consulting place, and I did it, and basically I am concentrating on rural practices.
So you're excluding them within your
no, I'm not excluding them because there are some things that are pardon me, I got a patient coming at 4:30. She actually lives in Colorado, and she wears sclerals, and she may or may not be coming, but anyway, so I've opened up a consulting company, I guess, I don't know, coaching, call it what you want it. I called it Legit Vision because part of the overall structure is after my first initial visit to your practice, you can actually come to see my practice. And one of the reasons I did that is, one, I think some of my clients may want to see me do this here, but number two, I called it Legit Vision because it's legitimately what I do. Mm-hmm. I will never quit seeing patients because I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So, one of the options the client has is they can come see me, but also I don't have brochures, and I don't want it to be a cookie cutter program because, in 2 or 3 days, you can't teach somebody everything. So I always do a pre-interview, and I make sure I'm a good fit. So oddly enough, the first person that contacted me was in Metro Chicago. And we did the pre-interview, and 10 minutes in, I actually kind of said, I don't think, I am the person for you, because it's just not the same. But the two clients, I've got clients in a couple of rural locations, and what they told me is I've had other consultants, but you could tell they were from Chicago. They were from Houston. They were from, there's not a lot of consultants that come from where the Moonshiners is filmed. Which that is true. Mark and Digger are patients of mine. They're on the show The Moonshiners. So, I've had several rural practices say, I wish you'd have been available years ago, because you actually get what I do on a daily basis in a small town. So that was a long answer, but basically you're right. Like, I may not be the consultant for somebody in Los Angeles and Chicago and New York, and I might be. We might have an interview. Maybe your 2 or 3 things you need help with, or something I can help you with, like bringing a partner in. But apparently you have a lot harder time bringing in a potential partner to Newport, Tennessee than you do to Chicago.
Is that the case?
I would say so. Yeah, I'd say most people in their mid to late 20s do not want to come to a small rural practice. They want to go, maybe stay where their optometry school was, or you don't see a lot of people. Yes, it's harder to attract any doctor. I don't think it's just optometry. I think you hear this all the time, that it's much harder to get doctors to come. There are government programs that pay doctors to go to small rural areas just to get them there. And then you hear people talk about the overcrowding of optometry or whatever. Well, not really in Newport, Tennessee. No,
Well, I would imagine your ability to purchase land and purchase buildings, and your reimbursements are basically what it would be if you were in Knoxville or Memphis. Your reimbursements are probably very similar to those, maybe even more, because you can negotiate better.
Right. But you're also in a small town where the cost of living is much lower, but your income's pretty much the same. Correct.
Yeah. Yes. So I think those are things that always make me scratch my head. But then I get it. I think about the challenges that we have as a profession related to just the demographics of the population. And, if you think about like the whole population, like all of society, like I was married when I went to optometry school. We sort of had a foundation in Nebraska. And so we were going to come back to Nebraska. That was the plan. It would have almost been impossible for us not to do that. My wife had roots here. I had roots here. But, as a society, people are getting married later in life. So many of them are they're not even dating anybody seriously until they get into professional school. And then they may meet people in professional school that are from all over the country, or they may meet people who are in other professions in those big cities. And in other professions in those big cities, where is it attractive to get, be a big time lawyer, or if you're a medical doctor and you've got another residency for 4 years after medical school, and there's all these other kind of pulls that are I think kind of this underlying draw to why we're seeing those same types of challenges. And I would even say, Kurt, is probably not so much just rural Tennessee or rural Nebraska, because I think it does exist, but it's by and large, I think, in most of the states where I do work as well, I see the same thing, but it's largely in states that don't have optometry schools. I'm seeing this a lot, right? Like if you look at South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, these doctors, even in relatively large cities like Omaha, is a metro population of over 1 million people. And if I ask the doctors in our Vision Source group, we just did this at our last Vision Source meeting, raise your hands if you're looking to hire somebody in the next couple of years. And every single hand went up in that room. And many of them are actively looking now, and it's just a challenge for them to find somebody. So I'm wondering if that's not a piece of it.
Oh, definitely. And actually, we've attracted several doctors here. Some have stayed, some haven't, but we're at least getting them here to try it. And that is part of, really, if you was going to ask me, like, as your your consulting company, which, by the way, the website is legitvisionpllc.com.
Yeah, great.
Part of it is attracting doctors, getting them to come to areas they wouldn't normally come to. And part of when I'm just now starting it, so I've already got 3 clients lined up though, and that's cool. But I really want to touch base with all the optometry schools and find out, really get a good relationship with the placement director and my passion for this arose, by the way, and I guess this is changing topic a little, is, watching all these private practices go either sell to equity or to other ophthalmologists or to ophthalmology groups.
Yeah.
And, as a past Tennessee president, as a Vision Source administrator, and as a 27-year private practitioner who learned at the foot of a champion for political optometry in Tennessee, probably the most underrated optometrist in the history of optometry, in my opinion, I just really have a passion for. I don't want to see these little one-doctor solo rural practices die or get sold to equity or to get sold to ophthalmology. I want them to stay private optometry. And I want to teach them how we went from a 2-doctor, $380,000 practice to a 5-doctor, $3 million practice in a poor rural area. Now, it only took me 25 years to do it.
Do you know the annual growth rate on that?
Huh?
Do you know the annualized growth rate?
Just like everybody else, we had good years and we had bad years. What I would say is the 3 best years of growth we ever had was the 2 years we moved into a new facility. So in a small
I hear that all the time.
Building, it's not even like easily 30-40% growth. And then the 3rd best year of growth we ever had was the first year we joined Vision Source. Just amazing learning all those ideas and everything. So our 3 best years of growth were those 3 years. The 2 years we built a new building and the year we joined Vision Source. We just bought part of that $3 million is we have a second location. Now, that's a really easy way to grow. And the other really easy thing was it was a 2 to 3 day a week practice, and we made it a 5 day a week practice. Well, that's simple growth, So, but to toot this guy's horn though, he's a solo practitioner, and in his second year he's already grossing over $1 million. So maybe he should be doing this podcast, not me, because he's really
well. I'd love to talk to him.
His name's Graham Taylor. Listen, he's killing it. He's doing a great job over there. I own this practice. I've seen it 5 times. I've never felt the need to really go over there. I just look at the numbers and go, well, okay. And I got a great, and matter of fact, when we bought the practice, we had a office manager that was there, and she was the optical manager at the time. And we bought it from her aunt, and her name's Gloria Kaufman, and she's just very uniquely and unusually and highly talented. Those two together have just really done a great job. So we're actually looking at building a new building over there. So it'll be my 3rd new construction in 12 or 13 years.
Wow.
So, one of the things I can help somebody with is if they're thinking, first of all, should I build? And then how do I go about it? I've done that rodeo 3 times. So I can be a big help on how to start that process and what to do and what not to do, and also add new doctors. So, I guess,
Well, tell me about that then, Kurt. When you think about adding new doctors, what are the thoughts that are coming to your mind when you're saying, look, I come to any kind of agreement where I'm looking out for, making sure that not only am I satisfied, but the other person is satisfied. What are the types of things that you think about when you're hiring an associate that you think is kind of unique?
Oh gosh, I guess are you talking more about what am I looking for in them, or just how do I get them to come aboard?
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is clearly you want as you discussed, is that you want the deal to be advantageous to you as the business owner, but right. You also want them to feel fulfilled by that deal. Right. As opposed to coming in and I'm just going to tell you everything I want and then you tell me everything you want and then we kind of battle back and forth. What's your approach there, and how do you think about that and articulate that to a new doctor to enter into those?
So first of all, what we actually pay everybody on the same formula, which is, I guess, a little unique. So you're kind of treated as a partner ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And I'm still tweaking this system a little bit, and I think I finally got it because there's tax implications and all that. So initially what I did is we actually took money, like we paid you like a partner, but then we took money out and we applied that to the purchase of the practice. But there's a whole capital gains versus personal income thing there. And then my accountant said, that they should have been writing a check, and then there's tax implications. It shouldn't have just been like this virtual equity situation. So if I was going to do it today, probably the biggest thing we do is we set the purchase price of the practice before they start. And so, and we make it maybe a little higher than market value, because the first year or two, they're going to get patients because it's your office, not because it's them. But then year 3, year 4 is where they're going to start. They're growing your practice. So, we might project it a little and say, this is what it's going to be worth in 12 months. Or, instead of doing 65 to 70% gross, let's set the purchase price at 80% gross. And then what you do is you say, okay, here's the purchase price of the practice, and when you're ready to go, you can go to the bank and get this money, or we'll self-finance it with these terms, or maybe we'll self-finance it the first 2 to 3 years, then you can go to the bank. And so I think I just hear a lot of young doctors end up leaving is because they were told, oh, we'll make you a partner, and then 5 years go by and there's still no partnership.
Well, I think also that it's the we'll make you a partner. It's kind of vague, right? Like,
right.
What does that even mean? What's the price? And actually, how do I even get financing? I got $250,000 of debt. And then from the owner's standpoint, the kind of struggles that probably come up that I'd love to hear your opinions on are just, what is the new partner going to bring to the practice? Right. What duties are they going to do? Are they going to think like a partner, or are they going to think like an employee? I mean, those are things that you can't know when you first bring somebody on board. So how do you manage that?
Well, I will say this, even the one that just gave us her notice, she really treated this like she was a partner. And so actually we're very sad to lose her, because she was very involved. She did a lot for the practice. I mean, she was only here a year and a half, but can easily say that our practice is better off because she was in it, even though I think her last day is going to be in the middle of March or something. Oddly enough, there's another optometrist in town, and this is the third time he's done this to us within like 10 years. He keeps hiring our doctors from us, and then they last there about a year or two. I keep thinking somebody's going to go, wait a minute, maybe this doesn't work, because none of them are there anymore either. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we treat them like partners. We pay them like partners. They go to partner meetings. So we involve them as partners, and it's gone 1 for 2, and that's why I'm tweaking it. The first guy that we did it with it's worked incredibly well, and honestly, it worked incredibly well with the second one. I don't know exactly what happened there, but I think I told you there was the pay thing, but anyway. With the first guy, but we just treat them like partners. I guess that's the best way to put it. And we, like I said, in the negotiations with this latest one, she kind of wanted to not have to work like a partner anymore, but get paid like one, and that was where and that's the way I took it. Now, like I said, I'm sure there's 2 sides to every story, but she wanted more money, but not have to do some of those partner things anymore. I thought, well, that's not the way this works. You need to be a partner. You need to go visit doctors and one of the best things we ever did in our practice, we grew our medical 60%. Mike Rothschild can verify that, because we're on Revolution. And when our new doctor 5 years ago came aboard, we literally took her to every medical facility in town and introduced her. And Mike Rothschild called me and said, I don't know what you're doing, but your medical is up 60%. So, it's one of the big things I like when if I go to consult with somebody, we're going to find out where their local doctors are and set up some meetings, if you really want to grow your medical.
Yeah. I mean, especially in rural towns. I mean, those, if ophthalmology is few and far between and hospital systems are few and far between, I mean, what an easy right. I mean, what an easy no-brainer solution for growth.
It's quick. And keep going. Like, go 2 or 3 times a year. And by the way, the checkout person is your most important person. The one that as the patient is leaving. Because there's one family practice center in town, like, she literally, if you're a diabetic, and now we don't steal from others. So if she says, do you have an eye doctor? And if the answer is no, she goes, well, these people will call you tomorrow.
Yeah.
They fax us that list of their diabetics, so we see all their diabetics. And they even have the camera, and they still send them. So, well, they get the camera on occasion. I think they rent it.
You know, that's an interesting one. You know, unpack that a little bit. So when you go in there, because that's what I've noticed is that as we talk to other providers across, you know, in our community in Omaha, most of it's not the doctors that are recommending. Like, you know, when I think about, I've got a patient that needs some sort of procedure or something that is beyond my scope, and I send them someplace. Like, I will send them specifically to some place. Like, this is the guy you should see. I don't give them a whole bunch of cards. But it's hard to know, like, some of those primary care providers and pediatricians and internal medicine physicians, they just sort of have this pool of, like, here, go see one of these people, and they'll sort of give out cards. And we've had the same success where, you know, it's talking to the people at the front desk, the schedulers in particular. Right. But what would be really valuable would be, like, is there a way that you can almost start getting referrals specifically from that other provider? Have you had any success with that? Today I want to talk about the MyDay multifocal for just a second. It has been a really great thing in our practice for our patients who are presbyopes of all areas, but you know, those tricky presbyopes are always the ones that are kind of emerging, where they don't want to give up any of their far away vision, but they're having some struggles up close. And so what the MyDay multifocal has been able to do for us is to allow those patients to transition into a multifocal more easily. And then as we have those patients progress into other levels where they need more ad powers, it's been a nice smooth transition. So the ultimate hurdle that we've seen in our practice before the MyDay multifocal was that we'd have patients who would resist any transition to a multifocal lens because of that distance blur. We just haven't seen that. So if you haven't started using MyDay multifocal in your practice, I would encourage you to start, check it out, reach out to your Cooper reps for those trial lenses, and commit to MyDay multifocal for your patients. I think they're going to like it. If you haven't checked out MacuHealth yet for your patients in Category 1 through Category 4, I think there's a lot of evidence that you should be considering. The first is, if we just look at AREDS 2 and what they talk about, MacuHealth so for patients in Category 3 and Category 4 AMD, MacuHealth is a great option for them that follows that entire protocol, and it also adds mesozeaxanthine to the mix, which, if you look at some of the evidence, I believe shows me that it's going to thicken the macular pigment better than without mesozeaxanthine. It also uses the correct AREDS 2 dose of zinc at 25 milligrams, and so you don't have to worry so much about the potential side effects of zinc. The other thing to think about, and it's beyond the scope of this, although you've probably heard me talk on other podcasts, is that in patients in Category 1 and 2, there may be some additional benefit to supplementing them with something that may be a little bit less than the AREDS 2, so you don't have to add as much to it. And that's where I use the MacuHealth LMZ3. And so I think if you haven't done this yet, I'd consider MacuHealth in your practice and for your patients. And it's been great for my patients, and we really feel like we have the ability to help those patients in all categories of macular degeneration.
Yeah, and actually, here's what I would say it's just simple. Like we've talked earlier, generation to generation, still nothing beats hard work. You just got to, and by the way, and nobody else is going to do it, not even, let's say, so Vision Source. I'm the administrator for East Tennessee. I'll give you a great example. One of the reasons, too, I got really involved in AOA, I'm on my soapbox here a little, too, is we're getting better, but we have done a very poor job of educating healthcare of what optometry can do. I actually talked to a guy from Humana that ran 11 states for Humana. The guy's name is David Anand. You can look it up. He runs the Mid-Atlantic region, 11 states for Humana. And this has been within the last 3 or 4 years. Looked me dead in the eye, and when we were talking, he said, "Well, y'all can't treat glaucoma. We'll just skip that." He had no idea that optometry could treat glaucoma, and he ran 11 states for Humana.
Yeah.
Take out ophthalmology. Most MD providers are not anti-optometry. They are ignorant of optometry.
Correct.
They don't know what we can do. Tri-West, a lot of people here know Tri-West because optometry does a lot with Tri-West. The very first meeting between primary care optometry and Tri-West was in Morristown, Tennessee, between me and a higher up. Have you ever heard of Tri-West?
We don't have it. In Nebraska, it's not big.
Okay, it's big in a lot of areas, and it started with me and this guy, military guy. So I came in 5 minutes early for a noon lunch, and in the military, if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. And so I kind of knew that. So when I came in, I apologized to the guy, and I said, I apologize that I'm 5 minutes early, basically. I had an ocular emergency. And he looked at me funny. So I showed up thinking I'm going to talk to this guy about providing medical eye care for veterans. Tri-West was the system that optometry in my region could see veterans through the VA system if they were not close enough to a VA or whatever.
Okay.
So he said, an emergency? What was it? I said, well, this guy had a foreign body and I took it out. He said, aren't you an optometrist? And I said, yes. And he looked at me kind of pissed off and went, why did you not send that to an ophthalmologist? So I showed up at this meeting to this healthcare executive with Tri-West that you would think would know better to talk about providing complete eye care for veterans, and he thought we were just glasses and contacts. And I had to spend this whole meeting going over, no, we can do diabetic things. So here's why I'm saying that. So even here locally, Dr. Emily Eisenhower is my junior partner, has a relative who is a nurse practitioner. And I negotiated a thing with Vision Source and a local group called Summit where we would be the preferred provider for all their diabetics. And I really thought the magic bus was going to pull up out front with all the diabetics in town. Well, they never showed up. So finally, a couple of months later, Emily goes over to where this nurse practitioner is and say, hey, you're with Summit. Didn't you get the email about Vision Source? And she said, oh, yeah, but I always send them. She was sending all of her diabetics to a corneal specialist an hour away. And we're right around the corner because she didn't really think we could do diabetic eye exams. So a long way to drive to the diner, but it's open. Here's what I'm saying. And I don't even forget the question almost, but we have, as a grassroots effort, we have to go out and educate the healthcare community about what we can do, because a lot of them still don't know.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I wonder why that is the perception. You know, I wonder how much of this perception exists because just collectively on a day-to-day basis, most of the stuff that most people do is not that. Or when you are not encountering, when you are a patient that doesn't have one of those things and the only thing that you hear is here's your new glasses prescription, then you just aren't associating any of the other things that might be going on. I just don't know. I mean, like I think about the way I was trained, clearly the way you were trained. I mean, the way that we've been trained for the last 30 years or more, why that still exists, and I believe it does. I mean, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but like there's this systemic problem that our messaging, and I really don't believe it's the AOA's like battle to fight. I mean, I think they've got to help. I think they are helping as much as they possibly can. But you know, if on a day-to-day basis, the rank and file average of the profession, the average practitioner in the profession, is not kind of having these ongoing conversations about ocular health and systemic health and what we're seeing and what we're not seeing and what we're looking for and what we can manage and having this kind of ongoing dialogue with patients, then we'll always be put in those boxes, is my suspicion. You know, and we'll have these sort of little isolated, you know, practices like yours that have really carved out a lot of things, But I don't know the other answer because the communication doesn't just come, Kurt, from me telling you, hey, I treat eye disease, and it happens once. It's a constant ongoing flow of information. That's why your patients come to you for medical conditions. It's because it's part of the culture in your practice, and there's no illusion when you walk into your practice. My suspicion is, I've never been there, but there's no illusion that that's not part of the stuff that you do. And whether that's just an ongoing communication with your patients purposefully, or it's just that they've always been able to come to you when they have a problem and you've always been able to solve it or find somebody to solve it if you can't, versus like, oh no, we don't deal with that, go see so-and-so, or we don't deal with that, go see such and such. I mean, if it's not part of the practice culture and it's not part of the practice identity, then it's just going to be an afterthought. And it's much bigger than just solving an acute problem, right? You have to solve the acute problems, but you also have to manage the chronic conditions as well.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, like for 20-something years, I always cringe when I call a fellow colleague's office and the machine says, if this is an eye emergency, go to the emergency room and hang up. Yeah. Okay, well, then you're not, then you're never going to be medical. I mean, we actually, by the way, they're not expensive. We have a 24-hour answering service, and we rotate call, and we fax our on-call schedule to the emergency room, to the fast-paced clinic, to Summit, to the Family Practice Center, and they all have our on-call, and they know that they can call us when there's an emergency. But maybe even more importantly, every single patient that comes here gets a card with our 24-hour answering service. And what I always say is I hope you never need this, but we do have a 24-hour answering service. We're on staff at the hospital. So if you go there with an eye emergency, all you're going to do is sit for an hour or two, and then you're going to end up here anyway. So you might as well call me first.
Right.
So, and I do that on pretty much every patient. I'm not going to say I remember it 100% of the time, but I remember it probably 80 to 90% of the time. And they do call. And by the way, so we have an on-call system, but if somebody calls and specifically asks for me, even if I'm not on call, and this is easy being in a small town too, I usually will meet them.
Yeah.
It's just it's a grassroots thing. And luckily I had a senior practice partner that was he's in the picture of every Tennessee political victory ever, and he had that in place actually before I ever got here. So I should really only take a very little bit of credit for that. He already had that.
It's not rocket science, Kurt. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just doing the thing, you know.
Yeah.
And what I found in that same paradigm is that most patients are going to only call you when they really need you. The rest of the time, they're gonna be respectful of it. I think that's one of the worries. And I've said this before. I've said this a million times. Like with telehealth now and with cell phones, and then being able to jump on a computer to see what that patient's actually going through, there's a lot of intermediate steps that don't require you coming in, right before Mass on a Sunday morning or right after Mass on a Sunday morning to unlock your doors and see a patient. There's a lot of other options.
True. That is very, very true. A lot of patients will just send you a photo on your phone, and you just go, oh, that's this, and
yep, and we can see you on Monday, or do this, and
go take Toberdex for 2 days, and we'll see you Monday morning. Yeah,
right.
And hopefully that'll usually fix it anyway, whatever it is.
So Kurt, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you coming on here, and just what I like to do on this podcast is sort of get a sense of who people are and let the audience get a sense of who people are. And I think through that, they're gonna have a pretty good sense that you're the type of guy that may be worth reaching out to. So tell everybody how they can reach out to you. We'll put this in the short notes of today's show as well. Okay,
so there is a website, Legit Vision, LEGITVISION, PLLC.com. There's a questionnaire on there, and then my information. The easy email to remember, all Vision Source administrators have it. It's my first initial, last name at visionsource.com. So KSTEELE at visionsource.com. My cell number is 423-608-5248. And a lot of what I talked about here, as far as me visiting your practice, I think there's several ways I can help. And like we do a free interview first. It's supposed to be an hour, but my first one was 2 hours. And
like most optometrists, you like to give away stuff, which is good. Good for you.
So I almost at the call thought, well, I've already told you over almost half of it. But I knew that my first fit, actually, she's in Plymouth, Indiana. And she said a doctor's name that she bought the practice from, and I tried to spell it, and I was way off. So my response to that was Samsonite. I was way off. And she said, "Oh, Dumb and Dumber, I love that movie." I said, "Okay, you and I are going to be a good fit."
Yeah.
I knew it at that point. But she's in a small rural town in Indiana. I looked up the demographics, very similar to my county. She mentioned some of her issues. I've had those issues, but I've worked through them. And what I told her is it took me 25 years to get here. I want to see you get there in 5 to 7. That's the goal, is I can tell you what I did and what I didn't do. And, but, bringing aboard new doctors, growing the medical model, knowing when to build, knowing when to grow, knowing how to grow. A lot of doctors are just solo practitioners, and she even said it. She's by herself. She said, "I don't even know how to get started adding an associate or adding a partner." And, I've done that several times, so I think I can really help her there. So, I'm not just looking to do this for anyone. I really want to do an initial interview and make sure I'm going to help, because, like I said, both sides got to win. Obviously I'm doing this for a living, so you're going to pay me to come there. But I want you to say, first of all, I think I'm about half of what a lot of I pay for consultants. I pay double for what I'm charging right now. I want the other side to go, "Wow, that was the best money I've ever spent. That's the best." I made triple what Kurt charged me. Much. Very similar to just my overall philosophy. I want to make sure I'm a good fit and that we're both going to win. I'm going to make a good living coming to you, and you're going to make a lot more money because I came there. And that's
awesome.
The goal.
Awesome. Kurt Steele, thanks so much for doing this, man. I appreciate it.